What happened when Jasmine Crockett exposed Nancy, Mace's double deal live in Congress? The silence broke into gasps as Mace unraveled. Hit like, subscribe, you don't want to miss the knockout comeback. The House Oversight Committee room hummed with an electric tension that made the mahogany panels seem to vibrate. Nancy Mace sat with the confidence of someone who had never been caught in a lie, her perfectly styled hair catching the harsh committee lights as she shuffled papers with theatrical importance. But across the horseshoe of desks, Representative Jasmine Crockett sat with the stillness of a predator who had already spotted her prey's weakness. In her folder lay documents that would expose one of the most brazen acts of political hypocrisy ever captured on C-SPAN. In exactly 47 seconds, Nancy Mace would go from accuser to accused, from composed to completely unhinged. An entire nation would witness a meltdown that would define political accountability for a generation. From grassroots struggles to congressional spotlight, Crockett thrives on resilience and fearless preparation. Known for her research and blunt comebacks, she's respected as much for accuracy as for boldness. She had learned in the courtrooms of Texas that evidence was the ultimate equalizer. It didn't matter who had more power if you had more proof. She approached every congressional hearing like a trial, and today, Nancy Mace was about to learn what it felt like to be cross-examined by someone who never asked a question she didn't already know the answer to. Nancy Mace represented everything calculated about modern politics, a polished politician rising from establishment circles, known for calculated ambition. Sharp-tongued, dismissive, often confident in controlling committee rooms, until pressed on her contradictions. She had built her brand on being a reasonable Republican, playing both sides of every issue to maintain relevance with both Trump supporters and moderates. Her ability to pivot, deflect, and redirect had made her a media darling who always seemed to emerge from controversy unscathed. Today, that streak would end spectacularly. The House Oversight Committee room gleamed under the unforgiving glare of television lights that transformed every gesture into potential history. The mahogany panels, polished to mirror perfection, reflected the faces of representatives who sensed something momentous was about to unfold. Journalists crammed into the press section, their laptops balanced precariously as they prepared to transmit whatever was about to happen directly to millions of Americans. Activists filled the gallery above, some wearing T-shirts with slogans, others clutching phones to live stream the proceedings. C-SPAN cameras captured every angle, their red recording lights creating a constellation of witnesses to what would become one of the most explosive congressional confrontations ever recorded. The stakes transcended typical committee theater. This hearing on government accountability had become a battlefield for congressional credibility itself. Trust in democratic institutions hung by a thread, and every word spoken would either strengthen or sever that connection. The American people watched, exhausted by hypocrisy, but desperate for someone to finally expose it. The tension in the room was palpable. Everyone understood that careers would end today, reputations would shatter, and the very concept of political integrity would be tested in real time. The confrontation began when Crockett raised concerns about Mace's voting record on women's rights, pointing out contradictions between her public statements and actual votes. It was a straightforward question, delivered without malice, seeking clarification on why Mace had voted against bills she had publicly supported. But Mace, perhaps sensing danger, chose aggression over explanation. Representative Crockett, Mace began, her voice dripping with condescension. I don't expect someone from your background to understand the complexities of strategic voting. The pause before background was loaded with implications that made several committee members shift uncomfortably. Crockett remained composed, but her grip on her pen tightened slightly. My background is public defending and civil rights law, Representative Mace. What exactly about that makes me unable to understand your voting record? Mace rolled her eyes with theatrical exaggeration, a dismissive chuckle escaping her lips. Oh, please, spare us the victim routine. We all know you're here to grandstand, not to govern. Some of us actually work instead of just tweeting. The insult landed like a slap. Some Republican colleagues smirked, enjoying the show. Others fidgeted, perhaps sensing that Mace was walking into something dangerous. The power dynamic seemed firmly in Mace's favor. She had seniority, media training, and the confidence that came from never having been truly challenged. If we're discussing work, Crockett responded calmly, perhaps you can explain why you co-sponsored H.R. 3755, the Women's Health Protection Act, then voted against it when it came to the floor? Mace's dismissive laugh filled the chamber. That's a complete mischaracterization, and you know it. I never co-sponsored that bill. This is exactly the kind of lying that— I have the receipts, Crockett interrupted, her voice cutting through Mace's denial like a blade through butter. The room went quiet. That phrase, "I have the receipts," had become powerful in modern political discourse, but the way Crockett said it suggested something beyond typical political theater. She reached for her folder with the deliberate calm of someone about to reveal a royal flush. Mace leaned back in her chair, a sneer playing at her lips. "Oh, this should be good. What fabricated evidence do you have now? Did you manufacture some documents? Maybe got them from the same place Hunter Biden got his laptop fixed." The Republican side chuckled at the reference, but their laughter would soon die. Crockett opened her folder and pulled out 2 documents, holding them up for the cameras to see clearly. "These are from a congressional record," she began, her voice steady and clear. "On March 15th at 10:47 a.m., you added your name as a co-sponsor to H.R. 3755. Here's your signature. Here's the timestamp. Here's the clerk's verification." She held up the second document. "This is from the same day, March 15th, at 2:23 p.m., less than 4 hours later. You withdrew your co-sponsorship and voted against the very same bill." But here's where it gets interesting, Representative Mace. The silence in the room had become oppressive. Even the journalists had stopped typing, mesmerized by what was unfolding. Mace's sneer had frozen into something resembling panic. Crockett pulled out a third document. "This is your campaign finance report from that same week. You received $50,000 from anti-abortion PACs between those 2 votes. For hours, Representative Mace. That's all it took for you to sell out women's health care for campaign cash." Gasps sliced through the silence like gunshots. The sound of cameras clicking became almost deafening as photographers capture Mace's face transforming from smugness to shock. Her mouth opened and closed, but no words emerged. The woman who always had a comeback, always had a deflection, had nothing. But Crockett wasn't finished. She pulled out another set of documents, laying them out methodically on her desk. "Should we discuss H.R. 4217, the Voting Rights Advancement Act? You gave a speech supporting it at 9 a.m., calling it essential for democracy. By noon, after a closed-door meeting with party leadership, you voted against it. Or perhaps H.R. 5376, the Build Back Better Act? You told your constituents you supported the child care provisions. You told this committee you supported them. You went on CNN and said you supported them. Then you voted no." With each example, Mace seemed to shrink in her chair. The confident politician who had entered the room was disappearing, replaced by someone who looked trapped. Her hands had begun to tremble slightly, papers rustling as she tried to find something, anything, to counter with. This is taken out of context," Mace stammered, her voice having lost all its earlier authority. "You don't understand the pressure, the considerations." "The pressure from your donors?" Crockett interrupted. "The considerations of your campaign account? Help me understand, Representative Mace. Which votes represent your actual beliefs? The morning versions or the afternoon reversals?" That's when Mace snapped. Her face flushed red as she slammed her hand on the desk, the sound echoing through the chamber like a gunshot. "You want to do this? You want to play this game? Take it outside then. Let's settle this like." She caught herself, realizing what she had just said on live television in a congressional hearing in front of millions of viewers. The committee room erupted in shocked murmurs. Had a sitting congresswoman just challenged another to a physical fight? The chairman banged his gavel repeatedly, calling for order, but the damage was done. Mace's composure had completely shattered. She stood up, pointing at Crockett with a shaking finger, her voice rising to nearly a shout. "You think you're so smart? You think you've got me figured out? You don't know anything about what it takes to survive in this place. You don't know the compromises, the deals, the reality of politics." Crockett remained seated, her calmness in stark contrast to Mace's meltdown. When she spoke, her voice was quiet but carried to every corner of the room. "You can't play both sides and claim to stand for truth." The simplicity of the statement, delivered with such calm authority while Mace stood there shaking with rage, created a visual that would be memed, shared, and remembered forever. It was the perfect encapsulation of authenticity facing hypocrisy, of preparation defeating performance, of truth confronting lies. Mace's response was incoherent fury. She grabbed papers from her desk, waving them wildly. "These are lies. All lies. You've taken everything out of context. I've been set up. This is a witch hunt. You're just jealous because I can work across the aisle while you're too radical for anyone to work with." but her protests sounded desperate, unhinged. The more she ranted, the more she proved Crockett's point. She had been exposed not just as a hypocrite, but as someone who would completely lose control when confronted with evidence of that hypocrisy. "Representative Mace," Crockett said, her voice still maddeningly calm, "I haven't taken anything out of context. These are your votes, your signatures, your recorded statements. The only person who set you up is yourself, every time you chose campaign contributions over constituents, party pressure over principle." She began packing up her documents with deliberate calm. "You asked if I wanted to take this outside. I don't need to. I've beaten you right here with facts in front of the American people. That's how democracy is supposed to work, with transparency, accountability, and truth." Mace banged the desk again, her face now purple with rage. "You sanctimonious little," she caught herself again, but everyone knew what she had almost said. Several committee members were now standing, some trying to calm Mace, others simply shocked by the complete breakdown they were witnessing. "This isn't over," Mace shouted as staff members tried to guide her away from a microphone. "You'll pay for this. You've made an enemy today. You have no idea who you're messing with." The threats, delivered on live television in a congressional hearing, only made things worse. She had gone from exposed hypocrite to unhinged antagonist in a matter of minutes. As security and staff finally managed to escort her from the room, she was still shouting, though the microphones had mercifully been cut. The committee room sat in stunned silence for several seconds after Mace's exit. Then, slowly, applause began from the gallery. It spread through the room, even some Republicans joining in, perhaps relieved that Mace's toxic presence had been removed. Crockett sat quietly through it all, not celebrating, just organizing her papers with the same methodical calm she had maintained throughout. Within seconds, the confrontation exploded across social media. Hashtag Take It Outside began trending immediately, but was quickly overtaken by hashtag Crockett Receipts and hashtag Nancy Exposed. The video of Mace's meltdown, contrasted with Crockett's calm presentation of facts, became instantly iconic. It was shared millions of times within the first hour, crossing party lines as Americans united in their appreciation for seeing hypocrisy exposed so thoroughly. TikTok creators worked at lightning speed, creating edits that looped Mace's furious outburst against Crockett calmly flipping through papers. One video showed Mace's face getting progressively redder with each piece of evidence Crockett presented, set to dramatic music that made it feel like watching a villain's defeat in a movie. Another used a popular audio clip about catching someone in 4K, showing Mace's denials, followed immediately by Crockett's receipts. Twitter exploded with commentary ranging from serious political analysis to pure comedy. "She just ended Nancy on live TV" became a common refrain. Political scientists wrote lengthy threads about the importance of keeping records and the danger of assuming your contradictions won't be noticed. Comedians had a field day, with Mace challenging Crockett to take it outside, creating scenarios of what that fight would have looked like. Memes flooded every platform within hours. One showed Crockett as a judge holding a gavel labeled receipts, while Mace was depicted with empty speech bubbles. Another showed a split screen: Nancy Mace in the morning supporting a bill, Nancy Mace in the afternoon opposing it, with a cash register in between. The image of Mace's purple face while screaming became the new standard for expressing political rage. YouTube clips of the confrontation soared past millions of views in hours. Reaction videos proliferated, with everyone from political commentators to body language experts analyzing the destruction they had witnessed. One video titled "The Exact Moment Nancy Mace's Career Ended" showed the second Crockett said, "I have the receipts," followed by Mace's face dropping. News networks struggled to cover the story with their usual both sides approach. How do you both sides documented hypocrisy and an unhinged meltdown? CNN tried to frame it as a heated exchange, but even their commentators couldn't hide their shock at Mace's behavior. Fox News, typically defensive of Republicans, distanced themselves, with one host saying, "If you can't handle being fact-checked, maybe politics isn't for you." MSNBC ran the clip on repeat, their hosts barely able to contain their glee. "This is what accountability looks like," one commentator said. Crockett didn't attack Mace personally. She just showed receipts. The meltdown was entirely self-inflicted. Late-night comedians had material for weeks. Stephen Colbert acted out Mace's "Take It Outside" challenge, joking, "The last time someone lost a fight this badly without throwing a punch was never. This is unprecedented." Trevor Noah created an entire segment about political receipts, encouraging viewers to keep track of their representatives' contradictions. Saturday Night Live recreated the confrontation with the actress playing Mace literally melting as Crockett presented each document. For Nancy Mace, the aftermath was catastrophic. Her complete meltdown, captured from multiple angles and shared billions of times, became the defining moment of her career. Within hours, calls for her resignation began from within her own party. Donors pulled support, staff resigned, and colleagues distanced themselves. The woman who had tried to play both sides found herself with no side willing to claim her. She attempted damage control through a hastily arranged Fox News interview, but it only made things worse. She claimed she had been ambushed and set up, but when asked about the specific votes Crockett had cited, she couldn't provide coherent explanations. Her attempts to paint herself as a victim fell flat when the host simply played the clip of her challenging Crockett to a fight. Within a week, ethics complaints had been filed against her for conduct unbecoming a member of Congress. The threats she had made against Crockett were being investigated. Her committee assignments were in jeopardy. The politician who had seemed untouchable had been completely destroyed by someone simply showing receipts. For Jasmine Crockett, the confrontation elevated her from respected representative to national figure. Her calm dismantling of Mace, while maintaining complete composure, became a masterclass in political accountability. Speaking requests flooded her office. Publishers offered book deals. Universities invited her to teach seminars on political preparation and the importance of documentation. More importantly, her approach to politics, bringing receipts, not rhetoric, became a model for others. Young politicians began keeping meticulous records of their colleagues' votes and statements. The phrase, "Do you have receipts?" became a common challenge in political discourse. The era of assuming your contradictions wouldn't be noticed or remembered had ended. The confrontation also changed how Congress operated. Representatives became more careful about their votes, knowing that contradictions could be exposed. The casual hypocrisy that had been standard practice became dangerous. Some members actually became more consistent in their positions, if only out of fear of being Crockett, the new verb for being destroyed with receipts. Training programs for new members of Congress began including segments on consistency and the danger of playing both sides. The Mace mistake, voting based on who was in the room rather than principle, became a cautionary tale. Staff members were assigned to track their bosses' positions to ensure consistency. The long-term impact extended beyond Congress to American political culture. The confrontation had proven that in the digital age, where everything was recorded and searchable, hypocrisy had become a luxury politicians could no longer afford. The old model of saying different things to different audiences had been exposed as not just dishonest, but dangerous to your career. Citizens became more engaged in tracking their representatives' votes. Websites sprouted up dedicated to documenting political contradictions. Receipt culture entered political discourse, with voters demanding documentation for claims and consistency in positions. The phrase, "you can't play both sides and claim to stand for truth," appeared on protest signs, in op-eds, and in congressional speeches. Years later, political scientists would mark this confrontation as a pivotal moment in American democracy. It was the day when documentation defeated deflection, when preparation destroyed pretense, when a freshman representative proved that facts were more powerful than seniority or media training. The image of Mace's purple face screaming while Crockett sat calmly with her folders became iconic, studied in political science classes as an example of what happens when performance politics meets actual preparation. It served as a reminder that in democracy, those who do the work can defeat those who just play the game. As one historian would later write, in that committee room, Jasmine Crockett didn't just expose Nancy Mace's hypocrisy, she exposed the hollow core of performative politics. She proved that in the age of information, trying to play both sides wasn't strategic, it was suicide. The receipts will always exist, and someone will eventually present them. The House Oversight Committee room, which had witnessed countless political theatrics, had become the site of theater's defeat by truth. A congresswoman had walked in expecting to dismiss and diminish a colleague, and had instead been systematically destroyed by her own recorded actions. The mahogany panels that had reflected so many empty performances had finally reflected something real: accountability. You can't play both sides and claim to stand for truth. 11 words that changed how American politics operated. 11 words that reminded everyone that in democracy, consistency mattered, documentation mattered, and most importantly, truth mattered. 11 words that proved sometimes the best response to aggression isn't counteraggression. It's simply showing the receipts and letting the facts speak for themselves.